Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of If My Feet Could Talk. I'm your host, Owen, also known as the Ultra Running Matelot. So there's little to catch up, really, with me since the last episode, which was an awesome episode, by the way. And thanks to everyone out there who's watched or listened to this podcast via all the various means, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, all that sort of stuff, and even watching it on YouTube. It is really, truly appreciated. And I received so much feedback on the last episode. It's been really great. Myself and Lee thoroughly enjoyed making that one. But back to catching up with me. Well, I'm on day 919 today. I ran earlier today with Oppo, my pups. So I'm starting to plan the big 1000th day of running every day. So if you fancy joining me in person or joining me virtually, keep an eye out for that information. We'll start to flow out as I start planning it. It's a really big one, especially as I never really planned on going this long. I mean, I still take each day as it comes. So the 1000th day is my first comma. So it's definitely worth celebrating. So that brings us on now. Let's get into the next episode, or I should say this episode, really. My guest is quite local to me, actually. He's well known within the local running community and across the wider national running community. He's a former international athlete. He's a race director, a coach, a running guide, amongst many of his various roles and guises that he has. And he's kindly accepted to come on to this podcast. So everyone, I give you Ceri Rees. So, hello and welcome to If My Feet Can Talk with Ceri. How are you doing?
Hi, Owen. I'm good, thanks. Yeah, had a lovely day with the family today, so it's a nice, rare bit of time with the family.
Oh, what you been up to? What you been doing?
We went out to Dartington, met up with some friends. I won't say it was very relaxing. Two young kids running in opposite directions the whole time, spinning plates. You know what it's like.
How old are your kids now?
2.5 and 5.5. So yeah, the 2-year-olds learning to accelerate already from like 0 to 10 miles an hour in about like half a second, and the 5-year-old, you turn your back and she's gone. So
I sort of do miss that point, but I also don't miss that point. I quite like having a 11-year-old who's quite independent now. I don't have to worry too much about that side of things.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So, Ceri, for those that I don't know who wouldn't know you, but for those that don't know you that are listening and watching this, can you just give a little brief on who you are and what you do?
I'm sure there's lots of people who don't know me. So I'm my name's Ceri. I don't really know where to start, but I run a business called Wild Running, which I set up about 10 years ago, and it's played a fairly major part in my recent life. as anyone who's got their own business would know, it slightly takes over, regardless of whether you've got a family or not. But that started life out as a social enterprise, taking unemployed people out running, and then it grew into other things. And I now organise events, and I do a little bit of mainly online coaching. I do a little bit of navigation, and I do running camps. So the running camps are probably the mainstay of what I do.
Okay, I mean, you just touched your running counsellor. What exactly do you mean by running counsellor?
Oh, sorry, camps, running camps.
Camps. All right, okay. Well, maybe you can start up as a running counsellor as well while you're at it. It's a new thing for you. So that's great. So where were you born? Where did you grow up?
So I'm from Newcastle. You might not be able to tell. So I've lived all over the place since those days, but it comes out when I'm feeling passionate, or if I've had a bit to drink, usually, or if I'm feeling the adrenaline's up for whatever reason. But yeah, so Newcastle. I lived there till I was 18, and then left and went back about 22 years old to work on a newspaper and to play a bit of rugby, and then left again, and I haven't been back. I haven't been back to live there since.
I mean, like me, you probably couldn't tell I'm Welsh, but I definitely couldn't tell you're Geordie.
Yeah, people sound disappointed. Where are you from? Newcastle. What? Oh, really? Go on, do us a Geordie accent. And yeah, suppose I've got more in common with Sting, as I've got a slightly watered down Geordie accent, but it does come out. It comes out, as I say, when the blood is high, or the adrenaline's high, or especially if I'm speaking to my brother on the phone.
Because with your name and your surname, I when I first come across you, I thought you were Welsh to start with, because it's
well I am. I'm quarter Welsh, I suppose. My dad's Welsh. My granddad was Welsh, so that side of the family. So
you do it, yeah.
Yeah, he's from Pembrokeshire. He's a Tenby man.
So you do have a Welsh heritage in there, then.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you were growing up in the Toon, did you do much sports? Were you a sporty child?
Yeah, very sporty child. We're a sporty family. So I went to a comprehensive school where I was very lucky. Well, first of all, I went to a secondary school where I was very lucky. I had very good sports teachers there. So I was really into football. I was really into rugby. Rugby was outside of school time. Played on a Sunday at a local club called Northern with my brother. And then I played for Wallsend Boys, Newcastle Boys when I was younger. And then running came along. I had a very good French teacher who also ran a cross-country team, and she was so enthusiastic. She was called Mrs. Smith, and everybody wanted to be on the cross-country team. It was a cool thing to be on the cross-country team because Mrs. Smith was in charge.
Was she an attractive school teacher by any chance?
Looking back, probably not. That wasn't the motive, but I can see why you asked the question. Yeah, it was a pretty weird sport to get into at that age in your formative years. But I juggled sports for years, and probably up until the age of about 17, I played rugby on a Sunday, and I did running races on a Saturday, and later on I even played a bit of hockey as well. So yeah, did a lot of sports, but my sister was sporty. She did pentathlon, but not very. She wasn't very competitive, but she was very talented. And my brother, who obviously was I don't know if you know, but he was a professional rugby player. He played for England, so he was always a rugby player, but he was also a very good football player as well.
So obviously, you mentioned you got a sporty brother and sister. Was your anyone of your elders quite sporty, and did they inspire you through sport?
Do you mean in my family or
in your family?
Yeah, so my siblings. So Katie, we were a similar age. She was exactly a year older than me, so I suppose I was quite inspired by my sister. I wanted to do what she did, and she did everything. She did pentathlon, triathlon, middle distance sprint. She was good at pretty much everything she tried. but as I say, she wasn't very competitive. So as soon as she got to the age where, she discovered other things, she stopped. But me and my brother were always fiercely competitive. We'd spend a lot of time in each other's company and invent games, with a football or a rugby ball. And we'd go and watch my dad play rugby. And I realised now, looking back, that there were long hours of boredom where we'd have to watch my dad play rugby for a veterans team, which wasn't very exciting. So we'd take ourselves off into the woods with a rugby ball and invent games. And I think that was probably the basis of where we got our sort of competitiveness from, and also our sort of playfulness from.
That's cool. And I take it because obviously you got the Welsh side to your family and your brother playing for England. There's a bit of friction there when it came to the Six Nations.
Absolutely. I mean, to this day, I still get confused. When I watch England and I watch Wales, I want both to win.
Yeah.
And my dad's even more conflicted. I mean, when my brother played against Wales in the Six Nations, he sang the Welsh national anthem and wanted Wales to win. But my brother scored 2 tries against Wales.
And he was probably proud as punch as well.
Of course he was, yeah. But, he got ribs. I mean, most of his rugby mates were probably Welsh. Like his school mates, his old mates, the old mates that you keep in touch with, were all Welsh. So obviously there was a bit of ribbing going on there.
It happens. But obviously we've got, you mentioned that you used to play rugby. So when you dabbled in rugby, where did you play, as in position wise? What was?
So similar to my brother, I had a bit of leg speed when I was younger. So I used to play on the wing, but I also played fullback and fly half. So I played fly half quite a lot for Northern, which was the same team as my brother. But I wasn't especially good at kicking. I certainly wasn't Johnny Wilkinson, that's for sure. But yeah, so latterly I ended up playing on the wing. But I lost a lot of my speed when I started running long distance.
I was a winger myself back in the days of Colts. Until I had a career ending. Well, I would say rugby career, but who knows where I could have gone. But I had an injury that took 2 years of surgery, and I never played again afterwards. So,
where did you play?
I played for Redruth down in Cornwall.
Okay.
So all the way up from under 14s to Colts. And then I snapped and broke my ankle, dislocated it 90 degrees, and bones sticking out my skin.
Oh, nasty.
Yeah, it was during summer training as well. It wasn't even during a game, so I was disappointed. But it happens. You got injured yourself. What happened to you?
With the rugby, so I had a bit of funny. So I went rugby to running, to rugby, back to running again as an adult. So I quit. I stopped playing rugby at 17 when I won the national junior cross country, and I decided to go to Loughborough University and do athletics there. So I think that was when I realised I was going to really give it a shot at athletics. But then didn't quite make the grade. Went back to rugby at age 23 because I enjoyed the argy-bargy of rugby, to be honest. And then I played probably till about 30, early 30s, maybe mid 30s. So I played for Northern. I played for North Division 1. I played Basingstoke Division 1 South. I think same as Redruth, I think, at one point. And then I played for a team in Paris called Vincennes, and I played for Madrid, Complutense University in Madrid, and they were in the Spanish Premiership, but we were the worst team. We got stuffed every game. So we had this Kiwi coach who was, he's from one of the top Kiwi clubs. I think he's from somewhere like Queensland or somewhere, and he couldn't understand why we kept losing. And it was quite straightforward. It's because we didn't train enough. But he got a team psychologist in, and none of it worked. We used to get beaten every game, but it was kind of interesting because we played on these bone hard pitches out in Madrid, and after every game you need a skin graft. You had no skin left on your legs. It was painful. You couldn't sleep.
Wow. Yeah.
But sorry, you asked about injury. I forgot. Sorry, I totally got off the subject. I got a crunch tackled in a game, and I lost the feeling in my legs, and I couldn't move my neck for like 2 days, and it just put the wind up me, to be honest, because I was at that age. I wasn't gonna I wasn't going to get any better at rugby, and I just thought it's not worth it anymore. I'm 35 years old or something, so I just I quit there and then and decided to get back into running.
Oh, so when did you decide, you know what, I'm going to start hitting the running hard and I'm going to enter my big first race? When was that, and what was your big race?
Well, as a junior, I was always winning races. So I'd win in most of the local races that I entered, and I won the British school cross country when I was as a 12-year-old, a year young, against boys a year older. And then so I got a couple of sort of junior internationals, and I got an England under-21 international when I won the national cross country, and I also won the English schools cross country the year after. So I got into the British endurance squad as a result of that, but never quite made the transition. I was always injured at university, and I think I just. But your question was when was my first big race? So then I basically quit quite young at 23, because I was sort of just fed up with being injured, and I decided if I wasn't going to make it by the time I finished university, you know, a top university like Loughborough, then, you know, when was I? So I thought, okay, I've given it my shot. Let's do something else now. And went back to running at quite a late stage in life, probably 35, and it's more by accident really than design. I just was living on the edge of Dartmoor, and I'd catch a train over to Dartmoor. I didn't have a car at the time, and just ended up running for a long way, and realised I really enjoyed it. And I entered a race and ended up coming second. I think it was the Totnes 10K, and I came second in that without very much training at all. And so I thought, oh, maybe I should. I was quite old at the time, 35, 36, but oh yeah, I'm still enjoy this. Still got the competitive buzz. Let's see what we do with it. But it was more because running by then had taken a different type of enjoyment for me. It was more of a sort of therapeutic thing, I suppose.
So you mentioned you got into the endurance team. Is that when you got your international vest?
Yeah, so I got junior international vests, and as I say, I never really did anything as a senior. I stopped running at 23, but I was part of the endurance squad for a brief time, which was usually me sitting on the in the margins, being injured, so didn't do an awful lot. But yeah, I run in quite a lot of big, sort of not big, but big by the standard of the day, I suppose, meetings when I was at Loughborough. But I spent more time being injured than I did racing. So like somebody asked me the other day what was my best marathon time, and which is quite strange to say that I don't actually have a best marathon time, because I've never run a road marathon, because I had cartilage taken out both my knees when I was younger, probably because of the rugby. So I find it extremely hard to run on road. I can run on road, but I can't run 26 miles on the road. So I don't even have a PB for the marathon, so which is probably my best distance.
That brings me on to obviously my next point, because I remember coming across you watching probably Channel 4, I think it was, because they showed the Snowdonia Road Marathon a few years ago, and you were leading, but then you pulled out, you dropped out because you were injured or what have you. Is that the reason why? Because you're
I think it was the first time I ever tried to run that far on the road, and definitely my body wasn't liking it at all.
Because you had quite a lead on. I remember you were well in front of the guy who actually went from second to become first and then won it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember driving up to Wales, and I think I just won the Kilda Marathon like 2 or 3 weeks before, and I was in pretty good shape, but for one reason or another, I had a problem with my I think it was my hip flexors, and I was putting ice packs. I was stopping on the way down, going into toilets and putting ice packs on my thigh all the way down to Wales, and I kind of knew wasn't looking good, just even to be on the start line. But I'd driven so far, I wasn't not going to run, but I knew I was going to struggle to get to the finish, especially competitively. So yeah, it was a bit embarrassing because I had an old mountaineering guide who I did my mountain leader course with up in Wales, and he said, "Oh, Ceri, I got my whole family out to watch you. You're going to finish." I said, "Ceri's going to win by a mile. He's in the lead. He's going to win." And you didn't turn up. And I got a lift back with it in an ambulance because of an ambulance following the race. And I ended up getting lifted. It was pretty embarrassing, but these things happen.
Well, now I know what happened.
Yeah.
You've obviously, you mentioned you won the Kilda Marathon prior to that. You've won that a few times. You've won the Grizzly a few times, which is a quite a big local race down here. Often, obviously, ballot run, so people often miss out and stuff, and it's quite a tough race, amongst other things. So, what would you say the best achievement you've had in your running?
Well, I'm fortunately to say it's probably when I was a junior. It's probably winning the national junior cross country. If I'm honest, since then I've always, all the races I've done, I've always felt like they were races that are well within my range, if you know what I mean, of winning, with the amount of training that I did and have done subsequently. And likewise, I don't think I've ever really been able to enter the large races that are fiercely competitive. You know, I live such a long way from the Lake District. To go all the way up there to do a fell race is a big deal. Although I have done a couple. And then likewise, the big international races like the UTMB and races like that, just always been slightly out of my comfort zone for in terms of what I'm willing to pay to do a race. And so I don't think, as in the trail running world, which I suppose is what I do trail races because I'm too old to do track races. I'm too old to do road races successfully. To enter those kind of races, you need a sponsor, and I don't think I raced enough to get a sponsor, and I don't think I was widely known enough to get a sponsor. So that probably stopped me from taking that next step. Yeah. So to answer your question, I really enjoy the Grizzly, but not so much winning the Grizzly. It's just taking part in the Grizzly. If I'm honest, it's a great atmosphere. It's very challenging just to get to the finish because you've got so many different types of terrain, and those gravel beaches, pebbly beaches rather, that you have to run over. You never know what's going to happen afterwards. You never know if you're going to not be able to get out of bed for a week because you're hobbling around because it's nasty stuff to run on, or you're going to feel absolutely fine the next day. You just never know.
So thinking back on it now, on all you've done, do you have any regrets in regards to your sport? And is there thinking about maybe if I did this, I could have done that? Or...
No, I don't have any regrets. I think I've had a colourful life, and I think I've had a very rich and varied life sports wise. I feel very lucky. I've combined two sports that I loved. Both involved getting dirty. Both involved rolling around in the mud. Rugby, which I played to a reasonable standard, semi-professional standard, not professional standard. Cross country, trail running mainly, to a fairly high standard, and suck the marrow. I suppose the only thing that I would have changed was I probably would have pushed more to try and get a sponsor so that I could get into some of the bigger races. But it's not really a regret because I've always done the thing. I've always followed my heart, and so you can't have regrets if you follow your heart.
And obviously, you mentioned you live on Dartmoor now. You probably know Dartmoor like the back of your hand now, don't you?
I do, but I'm still capable of getting lost. I did a Dartmoor Runners event today, and I knew where I was going, but you see some of the really good navigators. They come from an orienteering background. I don't come from an orienteering background. I come from a running background, and I learned to navigate latterly in life. Those guys, it's intuitive and it's second nature. For me, I just take longer to process. Especially with running full tilt. But to answer your question, I feel confident. You could put me on anywhere on Dartmoor, and I'd be able to find my way, back, or I'd be able to find my way to the next point. But when you're talking about competitively going at full tilt, I think I can still learn from, the really good guys.
Is there any part of Dartmoor you haven't yet been that you would like to tick off?
Oh, I don't think there is. I think that there's parts of northeastern Dartmoor, sort of around Cosden, that I haven't really run that much. The Stickle Path, I've not really run that much around there for whatever reason. So yeah, I think it's probably there. I know the south of Dartmoor really, really well. And then the northwest, I thought I knew really well, until I started getting slightly obsessed with the Dartmoor 600s during lockdown, and I went up there time after time after time, and each time I found a quicker way. So I realized, actually, I think I improved my time by about an hour or something. I realized that, in terms of route choice, I had a lot of improvement to do.
I mean, Dartmoor's, if anyone listening to this or watching hasn't been on Dartmoor for a walk or a run, it's a beautiful place we have down here. I was up there this yesterday and today, actually, running with my dog. The sun was out. It was stunning. Bit of a chilly breeze, a bit of bite in the air.
Oh yeah, it was quite chilly today, wasn't it? But it's that kind of light that when it's dry underfoot and it's light, it doesn't matter how cold it is, it's going to be uplifting. When you get that quality of light, and it's dry, because it hasn't rained that much on Dartmoor, it's just perfect. I think Dartmoor's one of the best places to run when it's like that.
I mean, we are very fortunate down here in the southwest to have some great trails to run on. And as you said, you were able to run the 600s during the lockdowns and stuff. It's on my doorstep. I was able to run to the very tip of it, Rober Downs, and able to run from there all over.
Yeah. So you were in the army, weren't you?
I'm in the Navy.
The Navy. So that's like the worst thing you can say, isn't it?
No, it's all right. We often get called the army in the media.
So you must have done. Did you do a bit of your training on Dartmoor then?
Yeah. We do a tiny. The Navy does very little up there. I mean, the most you do is a couple of days during basic training, which is what I do at the moment. I instruct the basic training, so I go up there once during a program of recruits. And yeah, you don't do a great deal on Dartmoor. It's more the Marines that pretty much live out there, from Bickley and stuff. They're always up there. So sadly, because I would like to spend more time up there, but no, my job's at sea, so there's no reason really to put me on land like that, really.
Yeah, surely, if anything, surely they want you to lack energy so that you don't have to get itchy feet to kind of leave the boat when you leave the harbour.
Well, you say that.
Do they have gyms on boats?
Yeah, certain. It depends on the size of your ship. It'll depend on what equipment you have. I mean, I'm quite lucky. I've been, my last two ships are the bigger ships, so we had reasonable decked out area for exercise, especially as we got a lot of Royal Marines on board ship, and all they do is fizz. So we had treadmills, we had bikes, we had a lot of full on weights and all sorts. So I'm quite lucky in that respect, where the smaller the ship, there's not really a lot of room. So you may get a little set of weights, you may get a treadmill or a rowing machine, maybe. Otherwise, you're running around the upper deck if that's possible. So it all depends really on what you're doing. It depends on what type of exercise you're able to carry out.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there must be quite a lot of fit guys on the ship who are champing at the bit to actually get out and.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be, when we used to run the old field gun competition, the command, where you had Plymouth, Portsmouth, and stuff at the World Tournament. We had some of the fittest guys in the world on board ships, but obviously they had to make do. It's like being in a lockdown. You had to make do with a lot of whatever you had is what they would use to train to keep their fitness up ready for their season. So It's no difference really to being stuck in a lockdown half the time. You do what you can.
Yeah, I used to live with an ex-Marine when I was living in Poole, and he taught me a lot about how to use a gym properly. Because I only ever used the gym as a sort of injury prevention tool when I was playing rugby, really. And he taught me to sort of take it to the next level when it comes to pain endurance and that sort of thing, and tolerance levels, because it was incredible. His kind of resilience when it came to things like lifting weights. He was quite a small guy.
Yeah,
Lift way above his weight.
yeah, they can be quite impressive machines, the Royal Marines, when they're doing their physical activities. But that's we've mentioned obviously the lockdown and stuff, and that brings us into obviously where I plan to go. And like most people, the pandemic was, it still is pretty shit for many people, and it couldn't have happened at a worse time for you and your family. Your other half found a lump in her breast and was diagnosed with a grade 3 invasive ductal carcinoma. I think I pronounced it.
Carcinoma.
Yeah, with
Carcinoma.
abnormal looking lymph nodes back in May 2020. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we gave it a name. We called it Edna, as in the volcano.
Yeah.
Because we thought let's make it real and let's make it something that's not scary. So and also it's a story to tell Sarah and the 5-year-old, and we could say, this is something that's here. It's laying dormant. It's come to the surface, and then it's going to go one day. So and that's exactly what's happened.
So when you found out, obviously, this news, how did you find it, first of all? Because obviously I can imagine how it felt for your other half and stuff, because it actually, she's the main person it affected. Yeah. But we were chatting about this earlier. As blokes, we don't really talk about this sort of stuff. So how did you find it? How did it affect you?
Well, first of all, we decided me and Emily, I'd say it affected us initially. I honestly would say it affected us in the same way, because in that, although wasn't my body, we were a team and we were going to treat it as a team. And you feel, when you get the news like that, you feel sick to the stomach, and it's exactly the same as anyone who's been through that situation will tell you. We've got family. It's exactly the same as if they say it's you. It's no difference when you get the news, because you feel sick to the core. It's their life, but it's also it's your life, because it's your loved one. It's the person you've committed your life to. And we decided, whatever the news was going to be, that we were just going to be positive about it, and we were going to treat it as though it's just a challenge and an obstacle to overcome, no matter what the news was. And yeah, the news wasn't great, but we took it on as a challenge. And yeah, we did have a couple of days where, well, it was probably more than a couple of days, to be honest, where we felt knocked for six and pretty low. But pretty quickly, we both decided to treat it as though, like a challenge. So Edna would become something to live with. So yeah, that was nasty for both of us. But then I was very lucky in that I did all the research, because Emily, it was too much for her to also take on all the research. So I knew the odds, I knew all the repercussions, I knew the risk of various operations. I did a lot of research, which, to be honest, helped me, because I could chuck myself into it mentally. Sometimes it was a bit overwhelming and I had to take a backward step, but I felt that was my contribution to do the research that Emily couldn't do, to take some weight off her. And then latterly, I think I probably became a little bit, I was probably a bit of a pain in the arse, to be honest, because whenever she spoke to consultant, I'd be listening in and chipping in with my questions. And so I probably was a bit of a thorn in the side, but we decided to be proactive, because I looked at all the sort of 10 common characteristics of people who recover from cancer. And the overwhelming things are, one is to be proactive. So you don't just take at face value what a doctor says to you. You do your own research. Another one is to be positive. As soon as you decide that you're going to treat again, it's taking stuff at face value. If you take it at face value and it's negative, you're not going to recover as easily. So, but also it's about looking for opportunities, and there's so much out there now. There's so much information. There's networks. There's support groups. So we discovered Force, who were a counselling group, which didn't help with the recovery, but it did help on an emotional level for Emily and for Seren. So Emily got some great support there, and so did my 5-year-old, who was doing play therapy. That became particularly important, when we got the news that Emily was BRCA1, so she tested one for the gene, which is a genetic mutation, which meant that this is all double whammy really, because it's something you can pass on to the kids. But we also decided to take that as a challenge because, all sorts of people have all sorts of genetic mutations and might not be aware of it, and it's something that one day they'll find a cure for. And hopefully that'll be in time for our kids, 18th birthdays. So yeah, again, we took that as a challenge.
So obviously you mentioned it, obviously you spoke to your eldest child about it. This whole event came not long after the birth of your second child, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Emily had a really traumatic birth, like a cesarean of category 1, and the little one was lucky to see the light of day at the end of it. But so we felt very lucky to have a little baby at the end of it all. But yeah, that kind of kick-started it probably, and it was soon after that she got diagnosed in March, after having given birth in November. Yeah, there was Emily's been through a lot. She went through that, a traumatic childbirth. We moved house at the same time into like a shell of a house in Loddiswell, which everything needed doing from like top to bottom. But we were so lucky; we had some incredible support from friends who came and helped. They helped us paint. They helped us, strip the walls. They helped us do the skirting boards. They helped us all sorts of things we had help with, which was just so supportive. And we had friends bringing us meals round. So all of that, to be honest, that kind of love was kind of overwhelming. At times it was just so supportive. It felt like it gave you strength. It sounds almost cheesy to say, but it's so true. It gave us a lot of strength and resilience. So we didn't just do it by ourselves. I'm saying we all the time here, but it's really Emily. It's Emily's journey. It's Emily who went through it all. And I was often on the sidelines feeling a bit helpless. If you've ever been at the side of your partner when she's giving birth, it's a bit like that because you do feel a bit useless. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, there's only keep blowing. There's only so many times you could say that, isn't it, before she wants to punch you in the face. Obviously, this happened during the pandemic, during the lockdowns and stuff like that. What did you find? You mentioned you were going off and doing your Dartmoor 600. Did you find that was helping you to give you a bit of space, sometimes a bit of me time, a bit of thinking time, and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it really did. Just getting out on Dartmoor was very, very therapeutic. And it always has been. Running always has been. It's always come back with a clear head. Your problems don't go away, but you just look at them in a different way. The Dartmoor 600s also became a sort of goal-orientated thing as well. I became sort of slightly obsessed with it, to be honest. But and actually, subsequently, I was talking to somebody yesterday, as a psychotherapist guy, who's talking about flash processing and running, and I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, it's basically the process of running. You're using both sides of your brain on both sides of your body simultaneously. So if you've got a traumatic experience, that you can summon or think about for a while, and then just let it go, and then go for a run, you're subconsciously processing it. And while it doesn't necessarily mean you'll come back with a eureka moment, go, oh yeah, your problem's gone away, it might bring something to the surface that you hadn't noticed, or it might just make you feel better about something that you previously felt bad about. And so I do think running is a very therapeutic thing. I don't think we've even hit the tip of the iceberg when it comes to running and therapy, to be honest.
So how is Emily doing now?
She's great. She's looking a lot healthier than I am, so especially in the morning. She's, her blood count's good. The lump's gone. She's recovered mostly from her chemotherapy, although there's always side effects. And when she was told she didn't need radiotherapy, she's had it after the double mastectomy, which we didn't know how that would go. That went really well, and they didn't find any more traces. So we're just, fingers crossed. We're hoping that it's going to be a happy ending. But yeah, she's back to run. Well, she has been for a few runs because she always used to run, and she's on the exercise bike a lot. She does a lot of yoga, and she eats extremely healthily. So yeah, she puts me to shame. I wake up in the morning looking like a 70-year-old man sometimes, and she looks about 30. She's the one who's had chemotherapy.
At least she doesn't have to worry the issue that my dad had after his cancer treatment. He can only grow half a beard now because he had a tumor on the side of his nose, and now he can only grow half a beard, which is really weird. But at least she doesn't have to deal with that side of things.
Yes.
And I'm surprised you didn't shave your head in solidarity with her, to be honest.
Well, I was going to, and I offered to. Emily wouldn't let me do it. So she did it with a friend. She's got this great friend called Jenny. And Jenny had no reason to, other than out of support for Emily, shaved her hair off the same day as Emily. And Emily said, I'm not letting you shave your hair off because it's why I fancied you.
Fair one.
So I said, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you definitely, because of it, you definitely don't look like a road runner. You got to keep it, otherwise you might end up being mistaken for one. So because of all this, I hear you're planning on running a marathon barefoot to raise some funds for Force. Is that right?
Yeah, for
Force. A little bit about that.
Yeah, so Force, I touched on it just now. That they rely on public donations. They're affiliated to the Royal Devon and Exeter Hospital in Exeter, and they provide counselling to people who've got cancer and family members as well. And I wanted to support them because they were so good with Emily, they were so good with Sarah. I wanted to do my bit, do what I could. So I thought, what can I do? Well, during the pandemic, I did a lot of barefoot running because we weren't allowed out, were we?
Yeah.
So I used to run around Bulbury Down barefoot every other day. I always did a bit of barefoot running, but not as much as I did then during that period of time. And so you strengthen your feet quite a lot, and you realize I just got further and further, and I got to the point where I could run 16 miles barefooted. So I thought, what shall I do? Oh, I'll do a barefoot marathon. Shall I aim for a time? Yeah, let's see if I can do it in 3 hours. But then I decided that I won't give myself, I'll make that a secondary challenge, because if I say I'm going to run a barefoot marathon in 3 hours and don't do it, I failed, haven't I? I've set myself up for failure. Whereas really all I want to do is raise money for Force. So let's say I'll run a barefoot marathon, and if I can run it in 3 hours, I will. And
where do you plan on running this marathon to?
It's actually a really easy terrain. It's the university playing fields in Exeter, the sports fields. I don't know if you've ever been there. They're just over a mile round in circumference, and the turf is lovely. They're immaculately looked after. So it's not gnarly terrain. Do you know what I mean? It's not like running through the streets of Exeter or running Boone Circle. So yeah, I've been generous to myself.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. That sounds good. And when do you plan on doing that?
Early December. As soon as I get a good weather window, and it's a weekend that I'm not putting on an event or a camp, which I think is the second weekend of December. either the Saturday or the Sunday. That's when I'm going to try and do it. Yeah.
Excellent. That's good to know. So moving on, obviously you got that in the books. Is there any other future sort of running events or anything like that that's potentially on the pipeline for you?
So I'm at that stage at the moment where I deliberately rein in doing bucket lists, because there's more important things. Family, keep the business alive. The setting targets, running related targets is secondary, but yeah, there's loads I'd like to do. I mean, who wouldn't want to do the UTMB? Who wouldn't want to do? I want to do the Yorkshire Free Peaks. Never done it. I've always been injured or having a baby or being a dad. Sorry, on the day of the race in one case. So I'd like to do that. I'd really like to do the Spine race, and there's a couple of others that I won't mention that I'd like to do because there's sort of unfinished business. But it's whether to go up or down. Because currently I have less time to train, so I should go down in distance. But of course, the real satisfaction goes in going up in distance, doesn't, when you get to our kind of age. I don't know how old you are, Owen.
Well, I'm 43 now, so.
Okay, so you're still a pup. You're younger than me.
I am still a young lad. Yes. I like to think that.
Yeah, well, you've got to kid ourselves, haven't we? But I was talking to a friend today, and he's a boxer. So he's not a boxer. He boxes, among other things. He runs a hotel for a living. And we were talking about how hard it becomes to know your boundaries in your 40s, because you don't like to admit that you can't get better at something anymore. But once you do admit that to yourself, then you then have to go, shall I keep doing it, or shall I just look for other objectives, or shall I try and do something different? And he was trying to coerce me into getting into competitive sailing with him. And I was kind of thinking, well, that would be interesting, but I get quite seasick.
Yeah, that won't help.
You obviously don't have that problem.
No, I'm quite lucky. I've never suffered from seasickness in all my years of working on the sea, so I'm quite lucky. I know a lot of people that do, but yeah, I mean, age, it's a funny thing. I mean, if you look at Damien Hall, he was in his early 40s when he hit the top 3 in UTMB, and he hadn't been running for that long, especially competitively. So, it's not impossible for any of us to achieve what we want to set out and achieve.
I totally agree. I think that age is such a false barrier. I think look at Nikki Spinks.
Yeah,
Damien Hall's a good example, but Nikki Spinks is a better example because she's 10 years older, and she's still breaking records.
And she went to the Barkley Marathons in America. I mean,
exactly.
That says something.
And she'll go back for more. But another example. But there's so many, especially in the ultra running world, and especially female. And I think it's partly because women, when they're bringing up children, it's so difficult to fit the training in, and then when the kids have fled the nest, they go back to it, and they're still really, really good. Why aren't let's talk about women. Let's talk about men as well, though. Men, I think I think it tends to be a little bit more ego related. So I think with men, it's like if they can't go on improving, they lose heart quite quickly, and then they find something else to do, to a degree. I think women maybe do it for different reasons, and they just realize they're good at it, and then just keep going and getting better. I can't speak for Nikki Spinks, but yeah, when you look at someone like Nikki Spinks and the things she's doing, it's incredible, and it is inspiring. Right now,
especially while working on the farm as well. She was
working on a farm, yeah,
which is not an easy job to do.
Yeah, exactly.
To fit everything in, so
exactly. I think and I don't think you have to live in the mountains. I mean, my experience of running the Transalp a few years back, where you're supposed to run in pairs actually, but I had a couple of good legs on that run where I did go off, and I realized that you can compete with the really good mountain runners because you get stronger each day. And there's some really good Austrian runners, who are in their late 40s who are really good. And part of it's just, in their case, it might be because they spent all their years in the mountains. But a lot of them just had also very good techniques. They were using ski poles. Running poles, but like ski poles. Using them like ski poles to project themselves. And there was a certain technique they used, and it was highly efficient. It was interesting to watch.
Cool. So that will now bring us on to, as we approach the end of this podcast, 10 quick fire questions. The questions are normally quick fire, but not always the answers, but we go with what we get. It's quite cool. So if you're ready, first question, what's your favorite snack on the go, on your run?
On a run? I'm not a big snacker on a run. I tend to put peanut butter on everything.
Nice. Can't go wrong with a bit of peanut butter.
Nope.
Okay, do you have a favorite bit of kit that you'd like to take with you on in a race, on your runs?
Favorite bit of kit would probably be it's definitely anti-chafe now.
Nice.
In later life, I've discovered that it's important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, where's your favorite place that you've run? It doesn't have to be in a race, but you've run.
Yeah. Oh, it's difficult. Probably the Italian Dolomites. Beautiful, lovely mountains, pristine lakes to swim in. Really, really gorgeous.
Okay, and your favorite ever race that you've done so far?
I think it'd probably be I really enjoyed the Felsman because of the support you got on the way. Some of the marshals were like young Cub Scouts. They're amazing, who camped out in all weathers, and I found that really inspiring. But probably the Grizzly, because the Grizzly is a bit like a travel experience. They've got prayer flags, they've got proverbs, they've got people playing the bagpipes in the woods, and then you've got Queen Victoria dressed up as a marshal. Sorry, a marshal dressed up as Queen Victoria.
Sounds better the other way round. You can imagine that. Okay, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh no.
I know the answer to this one. Trail or road, which is your preferred?
Yeah, you know the answer to that.
Trail, that one. Okay. Dartmoor or the Southwest Coastal Path to race on?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Because we're lucky to have both down here. So
yeah. So for training wise, I lived on both. I lived on Dartmoor. I lived in a little farmhouse near South Brent for 2 years. And I also lived right on the Southwest Coast Path in Hope Cove. And if I'm honest, when I used to wake up and go, okay, which way should I go for a run when I was on the coast path, right or left? Those are my choices. Whereas on Dartmoor, you can literally go anywhere. So it suits my mentality to go that way, go anywhere, and just make it up as I go along. And I think that, for me, was more satisfying.
Okay. If you could run with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Anyone dead or alive? Blimey. But so they don't have to be runners.
No, just you can go for a run with them and have a chat with them and all that sort of stuff. Okay.
Right. Well, I'd like to go for a run with Damien Hall because I think he's quite an interesting bloke and quite chatty. But he wouldn't be my choice out of dead or alive people. He'd be my choice as a runner.
Yeah.
But as an overall, somebody, maybe Ernest Bevan.
Okay.
An interesting person. Ted Hughes, Dylan Thomas. I'd love to have known Dylan Thomas. My granddad went to school with Dylan Thomas in Swansea. But yeah, I'd love to have got a little insight into his mind. I'd also like to have heard him describe the landscape, you know what I mean, in his Welsh.
I reckon it'd be quite an interesting run, and you'd probably write about it afterwards as well.
Exactly.
Have you ever run a park run?
Oh yeah, I have. I did one at Park, but I've only done the one. Yeah, so far, but I will do more as soon as I can coerce my family to come with me.
The kids get a bit older. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you like Brussels sprouts?
Yeah, I love them, especially.
I thought our sides were coming towards Christmas now.
Oh yeah, no, especially with satay sauce, soya sauce, peanut butter. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Have you any advice for beginner runners? What advice would you give them?
Don't listen to people who give advice. No, it would be to learn from your own mistakes, and really look at why you want to run. Look at your motives, because I think a lot of people get into running and they don't really examine their motives, and they go straight onto Strava and straight onto the extrinsic motivation. So I'd say find your intrinsic motivation, and then that'll sustain you for much longer. And then also experiment with your distance. It depends what age they are as well, because if they're quite young, so my niece is a good little runner. She just started out and she's already winning races, but she's good at quite a lot of things, so she could do a lot of things if she turns her mind to it. But if she decides to be a runner, I'd say be playful with your running. Don't treat it too seriously. Because it'll be the foundation for a lot of other sports anyway, even if you decide not to be a runner. If you decide to be a runner, look how many runners were good in their early teenage years and maybe later teenage years who were no longer good later on in life. So if you're talking about performance, I would say find a mentor who will motivate you and you can learn from. And when you find that person, stick with them. But if you're talking about just getting enjoyment from your running, and that's the main basis of it, I would say be playful with your running, keep it varied. Don't do too many intervals that are the same. Don't run the same route every day. Look for change, because also that keeps you mentally fresh as well.
Definitely agree with that. And if people want to follow you on the social or find out more about your race infos and stuff like that, where can they find you?
My website, so www.wildrunning.co.uk. I'm not very big on Twitter for whatever reason. So I am on Twitter, but yeah, mainly that. I do too much on Facebook. I'm trying to wean myself off it. But yeah, Facebook, Wild Running UK as well. But yeah, just go on the website and you'll find all my events, blogs, podcasts as well. Yeah, some resources that you can use. I've interviewed some really great people.
Yeah, you just had the legend that is Robbie Britton on, haven't you?
Yeah, Robbie Britton. He was a chatty thing. Yeah, I think we went on for about an hour and 15. I even edited it down, and it still ended up being an hour 15.
Yeah, he's
cost me more money because it costs more to host it when it goes over an hour.
Yeah, that's true. He's a fabulous guy, and I've known him for quite a while. But that's it really for the podcast, Ceri. It's been brilliant having you on. I'll have a little chat with you once I've pressed pause. But for the podcast, thank you very much, Ceri, for coming on. It's been great.
Our pleasure, Owen. Thanks a lot for having me on. So that was Ceri Rees, and what a great episode. I thoroughly enjoyed recording that with him. Please, get involved in some of his races, his workshops, all those sort of things that he lays on Wild Runners UK. So, yeah, go check him out. I'll put the links in the description. Fantastic. Really enjoyed making that. And obviously, I'm sending my love to his partner and family. I hope, she obviously gets through the cancer treatment and everything else that she's having. But no, that was really, really good. But that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share. Let's get it out there, all that sort of stuff. It'd be fantastic if you do that. But until next time on If My Feet Could Talk, I've been your host, Owen, the ultra running Matelot. And I'll catch you next time.